And let's try to magnify some of the concepts here so we will understand. We opened up the Sefer with Melech David Zaken, Baba Yamim. Yeah, even to David it happens that he's Zaken, Baba Yamim. The question is he active or is he not active, and why is he not? The fact that the Tanakh says, Vayichasu ba begadim, velo yicham lo. Notice it says, Ba begadim, with the clothing. We all know that there's special clothing for a king. And that clothing, when he wears that special clothing, it's not like David or me, okay? But it gives him a ma'amad, a certain status, a stand that he is the leader of the country by wearing royal clothing. And what is the significance that this, if we say this is the royal clothing, is not warming him up? It's maybe, some commentators explain that he's now maybe in the latter end of his career as a king. Thank you. You know where that's from? That's number 2. Is the record 4?
No.
1.
You know, when you sneeze, I don't flinch. It's like,
So I want to say that Babi Gadim, the royal clothing, is not affecting him. It's no longer giving him a stand. We can assume that the country, the nation, the people living in the city of Yerushalayim are aware of this, what's happening. Now, of all things, it doesn't say that they went and bought him sweaters. It doesn't say that they bought him a heater. So what do we have to know this intimate story that they went in search for a Nara Betula? And when they found her, she's lying next to the king, and when they're looking for her, we're told that she is a Nara Yafa.
How come David and Melech didn't try to daven to break the decree of death?
Chazal are full of that he's fighting up against the Malach HaMavet. He's doing his job. So on the outside, analysis here is that the royal clothing is no longer doing what it's doing for him. In a similar pnimi situation, or even more, Rashi brings 2 opinions. Why his begadim are not warming him up. Rashi says, Kol ha-mevazeh begadim eino neheh mehem lesof, lefi shekara et knaf ha-me'il l'Shaul. David, when he was being pursued by Shaul, and Shaul wanted to kill him, when he was in the cave there, what was the Yam HaMelech area, the Judean desert area, his servants, his officers, soldiers, were whispering to David, now's the time to kill Shaul. Okay, Arodef achar chavero, hashkem larga. Someone's coming to kill you, you let it preempt and kill him first. However, David, for deep reasons that doesn't want to touch the king, played it passive. Yet he was debating, and he was about to reach out to catch him, maybe not to kill him, of course. He tore the corner of the clothing of Shaul. Even someone who's saintly like David is held responsible for even tearing royal clothing. Who told you to touch him? Let him leave. He's searching for you. He didn't find you. He went into the cave to take care of his physical needs. Let him leave. You're not supposed to touch the king. David, even, that's David, on his level. Halachically, as an individual, he could have killed, but he didn't. Now, David is paying a price. Midah keneged midah. He tore the royal clothing of Shaul. Now, the royal clothing is not powerful enough for preserving his body temperature. That's one opinion that Rashi brings. Your question on that is?
Well, maybe if he got punished so badly for cutting the robe, would he get really punished if he would have killed him?
On David's level, obviously, I think that would be a good kal v'chomer. Kishara David at malach omed b'Yerushalayim v'charbo biyado Nitztanein damo mirato. The beginning of this chapter, close to the ending of our book of Shmuel, and we saw that the last event is David saw the Malach. He saw an angel of God, the destroyer, the one that caused the killing of 70,000 in Eretz Yisrael in that terrible plague. And there, David, when he saw him, and he wanted to destroy and kill more and more, the blood of David cooled off. It was so cold. He was so full of fear. This helps explain, as if this is the continuation of it, that his body temperature is dropping and dropping, and external things are not providing any matters. But the other point that we asked yesterday, why do we have to know what woman is being brought into his chamber, lying down next to him? What does that have to do? This is not a 2:00 afternoon soap opera on Channel 7 about the doctors or the nurses or whatever the terrible culture is as permeated into their culture. So there are those that explain and say the following. Yirmiyahu is writing this book, wants this to be printed. This story should be told. What does this remind us of? This maybe reminds us of a stain in David's life when he took Bathsheba, when he had relations with Bathsheba. And even though, according to Halakha, it was permitted, because we found out later that Bathsheba's husband died in the war, and according to Chazal, anyone that went out to Milchamot Beit David, what did they issue to their wife prior to the war? A get, a divorce bill, or shall we call it a conditional divorce bill. If I remain alive after the war, you're not divorced. You're still married to me. If I'm not alive after the war, you're considered divorced. You're a free woman to marry. No. And therefore, maybe we know that on David's level, it was a problem. After the fact, it was okay. David did tshuva. He paid for that price because he lost a child from Bathsheba. The second child afterwards is Shlomo. We're going to be learning.
4 children because of that sin?
You're right that he went through a lot of problems because of that mistake. Maybe the merit of Avshalom is that. You're right. We see that was decreed upon him a lot of troubles with his children. But the point we want to say here, why are we interested in knowing for all generations that at the end of David's life, he has this young, beautiful woman lying next to his side? So 2 points we want to say right here, that from a divine point of view, this incident is like reminding us of such the incident of intimacy with David taking Bathsheba, as if there is a stain on the life of David because of that. Yes, you're right, David. He was decreed with a lot of problems raising his children and a lot of punishments. Maybe that's what the Tanakh wants to paint a picture here, because there are people that think that's it. David is finished. He has this stain on him. And you know what? It can't be that the child that was born afterwards, Shlomo, is going to be king, because as if Shlomo was growing up in the shade of that stain, which helps us understand, because Adoniyahu, we treated Adoniyahu yesterday in our shiur maybe only in a negative light, but who says? The fact that he says Ani Imloch, meaning maybe he's not aware that Shlomo, if there's a prophecy or swear for Shlomo to be present. By the way, how old is Shlomo at this time? He's 12 years old. Who's in line after Avshalom? Adoniah? Excellent question. We're going to deal with that when he does become king in this chapter. Okay? Furthermore, we're told that he's Tov Toar. Melech biyado techazena. There's a pasuk, I forgot where, that there's an element of the beauty of the king. We didn't mention it exactly yesterday, but regarding the king of Israel, do you remember when Shaul was walking and he met up with some women in the town and they were flabbergasted looking at him? He was such a fine, handsome looking man, almost as good as you, right? Fine, handsome young man. And that and it was like a wordy pasuk, I forget exactly where. It shows that Melech biyofio techazena. You can view and see a king who's good looking. That's the situation of Adonijah. We mentioned yesterday, but in a negative sense, that his Abba, David, did not criticize him. Is that the only way to understand that pasuk? Maybe he never deserved criticism. Maybe he was what we call in Hebrew today, Yeled Tov Yerushalayim. You've heard of that expression? Yeled, he was just a good boy. Always acted and behaved well. Never needed a spanking. Never needed a ridicule. Never needed.
Not like me.
Yeah, not like you, David. Right? And therefore, there are people that really think in this generation that since he was born after Avshalom, he's good looking. He was such a good boy. We never heard in the Jerusalem Post any complaints about him. Maybe people think that he's right for a king, and he thinks to himself, he's right for a king. Okay? So it doesn't have to be only negative sense. There's room for this. Furthermore, David is dying. It doesn't say that he's dying on his bed, but he's the Ken Baba Yamim, and who's calling the shots? David is inactive. That's clear to everyone. I mean, I don't see another way to explain the beginning of this chapter. His servants, maybe his doctors and others, are looking for a practical answer, how to keep his body temperature a matter. But the fact that she does lie next to him, and what did the Tanakh tell us? Vamelech lo yada. He conquered his Yetzer Hara. He had no relations with this woman whatsoever. Okay? No women. And, when you read the beginning of this event in Divrei Yamim, we come to the famous chapter that, if I'm not mistaken, it's recorded inside our Siddur at the end of Psukei de Zimra. Can I please see that Siddur? This particular Siddur, which is Rinat Yisrael, they provide the sources of any verses that are brought here from the Tanakh. Here, look at this. Yeah. What are we told about David? Lecha Hashem. He says to God. To God is the greatness, Agvura, Vatiferet, Vanetzach, V'Yahod. Okay? David has reached himself greatness and the ability to overcome Gvura. He's praising God with Gedula, V'Gvura, V'Tiferet, Vanetzach, V'Yahod, as it appears in chapter 29 in Divrei Yamim. But the truth is, this opening of the chapter is showing us he had no interest to have relations with this woman whatsoever. So here we have a situation, his body temperature is not being kept. He's in a bed, inactive, he's not sick other than that. It's a complex situation. God purposely brought to the door of David, a very complex situation. Where Aleph, he's inactive, he's not calling the shots. Bet, a beautiful girl. Interesting, where do they bring her from? Avishaga Shunamit. Shunam is in the Afula area, not far from the Gilboa Mountains, the end of the Shomron. They go so far, imagine. Okay? So far to look for the most beautiful girl, the king, beauty. Inside the kingdom, there's place for beauty. Okay? You don't have to be ugly looking like, I'm not going to say, to be the king of Israel. No. There's a certain element, like we said yesterday, the outer beauty could be representative of the inner beauty here. So they bring her from so far in the area of Afula, etc. And the king overcomes any matters whatsoever. Let's continue now in Pasuk Zayin, verse 7. Vayu dvarav im Yoav ben Tzruya v'im Evyatar HaKohen vayazru acharei Adonijah. we see already a political group gathering together on behalf of who? Adoniah. So here, it could be that as opposed to David, who's on his bed inactive, however, he's a gibor, he's courageous until the last moment whatsoever, as he is a gibor and he's what? Not calling the shots, outside the palace somewhere in Yerushalayim, there's a Congress. Here's an assembly. Who's on Adoniyahu's side? Number one, Yoav ben Tzruya. Now, why would he join? Isn't or wasn't Yoav the chief of staff, as we saw in the end of the last chapter? Yes. But ever since then, Yoav has had problems. What does Yoav know? That David has a beef, has a litigation against him, because Yoav killed who? He killed Avshalom. He killed three people. Let's go in order. Avner ben Ner, Amasa, the brother, and Avshalom. For all, these three men.
Amasa is the brother of Avner?
Yes. Now, in the Chevron, before the Chevron event, when they were playing around with swords around the, if I'm not mistaken, around the pool of Givon. Now, what did David not do during his lifetime? He didn't issue a death penalty. He could, even if there were not two witnesses. David, as the king, has the right of above and beyond the law. He can punish not according to the law of the Torah. If he sees that he's a menace to society or he's going to cause other problems. So Yoav knows probably, ever since he's also been taken off of his position. We saw that he's no longer the chief of staff. So Rashi indeed brings that Yoav knows what's going on in David's heart. That David is mad at Yoav for killing these three people. And there's a likelihood that if he leaves a last will and testament, part of that last will and testament will be that whoever's going to be the new king, which David knows what some of us do know, some of us don't know, that there is a prophecy that the son of Mrs. Bathsheba, this child who's 12 years old, will be the next king. And David knows that prophecy. He heard it from the prophet. And Yoav is afraid. Yoav is afraid that once David dies, he'll give the dirty work to the next king, and Yoav is going to be taken care of. So what does Yoav say? If I can't go up against David, I'm personally, right now, maybe David will not be the king. Maybe there's no chance of David leaving a last will and testimony. Maybe now I'm going to join his son. Maybe his son is really going to be the next king. That's number one. What about Evyatar, gentlemen? Once David left Yerushalayim, Evyatar was ousted away from the Kahuna, as Rashi brings this, okay? Because of the Avshalom affair. If you remember, Evyatar tried getting an answer, and he didn't get an answer in the Urim V'Tumim. And Evyatar comes from the line of children of Eli. And there is a prophecy after the destruction of the house of Eli. Remember, Eli was the last Kohen Gadol, okay, in the tabernacle in Shiloh, in the Mishkan in Shiloh, and he was given a prophecy that I'm going to appoint a different Kohen from a different household. And who was Ken? And therefore, he knows that he's not going to be working, so he says maybe through this, a new Kohen, maybe there'll be a new law, a new situation. So we have two important people joining after Adoniyahu. Okay, again, Yoav for personal reasons, and here, Tzadok HaKohen, that maybe the prophecy is not applicable if someone is not going to be the king from David and Shlomo. Now, you don't have to be. There are a lot of ears in the walls. A lot of people know this is going on, and this could excite people. Let's read it. Pasuk Chet. V'Tzadok HaKohen, okay, uVinayahu ben Yoyada, v'Natan HaNavi, v'Shemi v'Rei, v'Giborim asher David lo ayu im David. It's important for the Tanakh to tell us the sides, who is not joining this upcoming rebellion. Of course, the one that was faithful to David Tzedakah Kohen, and as we learned in the end of the last book, Beno Ben Yoda was like the head of his squad, right? His top army unit, the head of the Kratim plate. He was also a great leader of the Sanhedrin. And of course, Natan Navi, who of course is Ne'eman to David, of course he's faithful. And here we hear about who is Vishim'i Virei, gentlemen. Huh? Could it be Shimon ben Gera? Maybe. And he did tshuva. Remember what Shimon ben Gera did on 2 different occasions? He cursed, threw rocks at him. When David was running away from his son's rebellion, Shimon ben Gera cursed him. So there are those that do explain that maybe he did tshuva and he doesn't want to leave David as well. So he stays with him. And of course, Natan Navi is the one that you asked about. That he's the one that prophesies to David that Shlomo will be his king. You know what? Let's see it right now. Open up to Divrei Yamim, Aleph, the book of Chronicles. Let's see this prophecy, because this is what's at stake right now. Will this prophecy come true or not? Divrei Yamim Aleph, Perek Kaf, what is it? Kaf Bet. Perek Kaf Bet, chapter 22. איזה דרך נראה?
לא דווקא על שלך להגיד, כל המחלקות, כולם, זה ממש ביטחון האנשים.
אני אנסה להפנים את זה.
Who wrote דברי הימים?
עזרא סופר. כ"ב ט'. פרק כ"ב ט'. Okay.
Why is it all the way so far?
It's the last book of the scriptures. I'm reading Pasuk Zayin, Chet, and Ted Ezra. Put it together. Vayomer David Shlomo. Look at this. This does not appear in Sefer Shmuel. In verse 7. Vayomer David Shlomo Bini. Ani aya im levavi. I had a heart. It was in my heart. It was my desire. Livnot bayit l'shem Hashem Elokai, to build a Beit HaMikdash. However, Vayi alai dvar Hashem lemor was God's words to me, and that was Natan Navi means Dam larov shafachta. You spilled so much blood. Umilchamot gedolot asita, and you had so many wars. Lo tivne bayit lishmi, you will not build a house in my sake. Ki damim rabim shafachta arza lefanai. You spilled so much blood in the wars, and who will be? Here it is, verse 9. Hine vein nolad lach. You're going to have a son born to you. This is while Batsheva would be pregnant. Huye ish minucha, who'll be a man of rest, meaning no wars internationally. Vanichoti lo mikol oivai, I'll put him at rest from all my enemies misaviv. Ki Shlomo yeshmo. Prophetically, his name is foretold. His name will be Solomon, Shlomo. V'shalom v'sheket etein al Yisrael b'yamav. Hu yivneh vayit l'shmi. He's going to build a house for me. V'hu yeli levein, will be for me a son. V'ani lo la'av, and I'll establish kisei machuto ad ulam, and so on and so on. You see the lengthy prophecy delivered here in Divrei Yamim. It's clear. There are many that explain in a negative aura that David is not worthy of building a Beit HaMikdash, and the blood that he spilled is looked upon negatively. However, I've learned from several of my great rabbis, my Tanakh teachers, that that's not the case. Rather, we should explain differently that David's mission in the world was freeing Israel from their enemies. He had no choice but to go to war, and his military operations and his military soldiers and officers did the best job they can do. And therefore, that was his role. His role is not to build a Beit HaMikdash. His role is to free Israel of any international threats and local threats from the Plishtim, like we saw, the giants we saw inside and outside Israel. It's not that he's not deserving. It's not his mission. It's not his role. Everyone has his role. The next one, and here we're told, The next woman to be born from Mrs. Bathsheba, which will be Shlomo, the name is already foretold. We're going to get to that. That'll be his major mission. He's going to have international peace around him, and that's why Natan. It's clear Natan got the prophecy. He told it to David, as we see it here. So it's obvious. With Yoyada, Natan and Avi joins. They're not going to be joining Adoniyahu. You have to be faithful to your matter. You have a question, David? I agree with you.
Okay. I think someone does.
Do you have another question? Okay.
Oh, so the second son, they knew the second son was going to be named Shlomo. They knew the next son that Bathsheba has. That
Ken, it's interesting. If I would, if I have to check it in Sefer Shmuel Bet, if I would ask you, two that are born, and their names were given before their birth. Not only was it not given at the Brit Milah, but they were both given before they were even born. Who are the two? Shimshon's name is already given before? No, I don't think Shmuel. You think Shmuel? I know Yitzchak Avinu. Yitzchak Avinu, his name was given in prophecy to Hashem, to Avram Avinu, before his name. Get to check that out on your time. I want to see a few more psukim before we go. Now, gentlemen, how do you catch public attention? How do you gain support for your coup d'etat that you want to be king? So look at the religiosity, the spirituality of Adoniyahu. In verse 9, Vayizbach Adoniyahu tzon uvakar umiri. Those are the most fattest animals you can find, cattle and sheep and the fattened up cows. Im even azochelet, and he goes to a certain area that the waters there are flowing. From the word zochel, the waters are 1 second, sir. Are moving from one area. That's even azochelet, and it's where asher eitzel ein rogel. Eitzel ein rogel. There's a mayan there down next to the city of David, where people would go and bring their laundry there. And also here, do lashon hara. That's what we're going to be talking about. Vayikra ein rogel, the mayan called ein rogel. People would walk there by foot to do their laundry, as it says there. And vayikrat kol bnei hamelech, he calls members of the kingdom, the former ones. Ulechol anshe Yudav de hamelech. He's a PR man, and he's making a big assembly. He wants to make a big shtick. He wants to look. I'm bringing korbanot. We're getting closer to God. However, who is not called? It's clear who are not the invitees, who are not getting. Now, I want to end today's shiur. We know in advance that Shlomo is going to be the king. And in spite of the stain stated in the beginning of the chapter, as if David has this lovely, the most beautiful, gorgeous woman lying down to him, reminding us of the stain with Bathsheba, Chazal say David built a world of tshuva. Because each and any time he made a mistake, he was upfront. He vouched for his mistake. He confessed about his mistake. He did tshuva after his sin or mistake that he made. And that's one of the great attributes of David. And therefore Chazal say that David built a world of tshuva. And maybe the next king, I heard this from also one of your neighbors, Rav, what's the name of the Rav in the yeshiva? No, not Rav Sadan, not Rav Evenstein, but Rav in your yeshiva. So he's the big Rav in the Mechina, head of the Bogrei Tzava program. I just forgot his name.
Okay, I know. I picture him.
Okay. So he says the next king is going to be a king that was born out of tshuva. That's what Hashem wants. If Hashem gave this prophecy that it's going to be Shlomo, the one that's going to be the second one born after the event of David and Bathsheba, that means because of the tshuva that David did, it works. The next king of Israel is going to be born is because that David was a Baal tshuva. And that's what the Tanakh wants to share with us. That's why it's a new issue, it's a new matter. We're learning about a new kingdom. The Tanakh did not start with this event at the end of the book of Shmuel. Shlomo, by definition, will inherit the kingdom from his father, because it's not like Shoftim. The kingdoms of Israel are to be inherited. The son will inherit the kingdom. The father will bequeath the kingdom to his son, and therefore it belongs to him. Plus, what? It was a prophecy, and why? Because Hashem acknowledged the world of tshuva that David did, and that is fantastic. We'll continue at this point.
I have a question.